Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we have to pause here since any button input starts the game immediately, which honestly I would kind of prefer that to be the case uh, with all games. There are limitations on console games as far as just how games can start, but that stops them from being like movies where you just jump into it uh, without any interaction. Of course, a movie doesn't have interaction. Let's go ahead and look at the graphic settings. I think brightness, when depicted here, is probably close to right. If we went maybe two nudges up, that would be alright too. But once you start to get too far, that gets out of the mood of what the game is really trying to show. This is the 2016 spiritual successor to the game Limbo, which came out in 2011 from the same developer Playdead Studios. Uh, the other aspects were by default all perfectly fine. This is not particularly a good menu in the way it depicts things, barely showing anything at all. I'll be playing with a controller, and then, yeah, volume is very much just at the maximum. So Limbo in 2011 kind of reinvented the simplicity of the wheel, having a slow platforming game in a world that had ever increasingly fast platforming and very difficult precision platforming becoming very much the norm. It is in a lot of ways a counter argument to something like Super Meat Boy or any of thousands of other games like Super Meat Boy, where you have to jump and move very fast and very precisely, otherwise, you will die and have to reset. Limbo, there were ways to die. In fact, there were very brutal, horrific ways to die as you played as a little boy. Um, and but they were kind of fewer and far further between. You didn't really get asked much as far as needing to have skill with the controls. You could just have a simple, laid back experience and experience the horror and the surreal atmosphere of Limbo. Now, from the face of it, inside doesn't seem like it's breaking the mold much 5 years later. The only thing that they've done here is they've added a bit of color, but you see that the character has no features on his face. He has like really no details as he's zoomed out pretty well. Uh, this is exactly how Limbo started. You're playing as a boy, it seems. Uh, you are in a forest. There's just happens to be some color. Uh, had this game come out a little bit later, you might as well have assumed that this was just a remake of the first Limbo game. Uh, but I do know that it goes in a different direction. Now, while there were a lot of also rans and copycats of Limbo, none of them ever really succeeded. So it would be weird to call Limbo as a innovative game. It really wasn't. It was a back to basics game. And sometimes back to basics is all right and needed even in the game industry. But when you make something that just gets back to basics and does it in a very polished way and a nice way, um, that's not a new gimmick for other people to copy. So when they just make Limbo but worse, which was pretty much every copycat of Limbo, most of which were never bought by anybody and not worth mentioning, uh, then you're held to the standard of Limbo that had that high polish. Now, arguably, maybe they spent too much time on polish because both Limbo and Inside, as far as Playdead software is concerned, are the only two games they've released, and it's been a while. If this came out in 2016, I'm recording this in 2022. That's a very long time to not put out a product. We'll try to go to the left, as is your typical aspect. Uh, there is an interesting question, certainly, as far as do you need like default button tutorials in every single game? Or can you just assume that most people playing on the controller know that A is jump and B, X and Y is doing nothing, left, right, trigger, left bump, right bump, doing nothing, D-pad doing nothing, left stick moves you around, right stick does nothing, left click, right click does nothing. So we're starting off with not very much as far as abilities. So you what we'll be looking for here very quickly is for something to happen, because that area here was the learn the left stick tutorial without telling you how to use the left stick, because you couldn't have walked to this point without the left stick. And this is the A button tutorial, because you can't walk any higher without pulling yourself up or jumping with the A button. Like, certainly when the games are more complicated, when you have pull the left trigger and press the A button, or pull the left trigger and the right bump and press the A button to do something, you may need some tutorials slash reminders to come back up. Uh, but on simplistic default movements, that's fine. Okay, so now we are in a different situation. We're seeing a barrier and barbed wire and people in the background and trucks. Of course, we don't know what's going on, but our character by default here is crouching. So we, in an interesting way, are being told from the character we're controlling that we are at least a little bit cautious around strangers or these people in particular. I suppose if you were going to name your first game Limbo, then there is a slight impulse there to follow the divine comedy of the Inferno and Purgatory, which would be Limbo equivalent, and then Paradiso. But nobody ever remembers or cares about the other two books in the Divine Trilogy, Divine Comedy. It's always just Dante's Inferno that people focus on. And if Limbo is supposed to be Purgatio, which would be Purgatory, then they've already missed an opportunity for an Inferno, unless you're going the other way. This game being labeled Inside definitely implies something else. Okay, we see some people. It looks like they might have some kind of masks on, which just seems like this might be another way in which they don't have to animate faces. Yep. There is a real argument to be made that Playdead should have taken their lucky success. Frankly, you have to take it as luck. It was just like lucky timing. It was the being, I believe, on the Xbox's Summer of Code and being put in front of a lot more people's faces because of that. It was either Summer of Code on Xbox or it was Xbox Game Pass, one or the other, that made for a some success there. They should have taken that as a point. Here we can see some dogs in the background. Definitely looks like they're looking for you and putting a lot of effort to it, looking for you. They probably should have scaled up. They probably should have hired more people. They probably should have become a lot more ambitious. I think I have to walk back this way. See, there's this like, kind of looks like a stasis chamber or something. Hmm. But it doesn't make sense why there would be a stasis chamber just in the middle of the forest that looks like it's actually still working. Hmm. I guess maybe I'm supposed to. Hmm. Hmm. See, the B button does hide on things. Oh, it grabs things. Interesting. So that makes an interesting question as far as um, was there something previously that we could grab? Like, since we are very much just learning this as we play, I can't grab that in the background. And I can't grab this. Okay. And that's as far back as I can go. I don't think we ran into anything we could have grabbed and knocked over. That there is a percentage of players, there's probably a very small percentage of players that would have just gotten stuck there and rage quit the game and not have gone any further. Uh, I was actually very confused by that. It wasn't obvious. It would have been helpful for there to have been another piece, a tree, or the wind blew over, or another refrigerator that the wind blew over. That way you can just know that in this game there are some objects that have some physics that would let them fall over, or potentially going to walk in water. And we hear a little bit of very soft splashing in the water. Hmm. And we just see a U sign here, which doesn't give us any indication really of where or what language this world is in. Hmm. Yeah, I definitely would have. Let's see, can I crouch down? Hmm. 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 So it turned it out I was going to need that. Yeah, this seems like this is going to be a lot of just the same stuff we did in Limbo 1 with the same level of graphics. Uh, Maybe they should have even maintained the black and white high contrast art aesthetic that was in Limbo. Although I don't know what you would do more with Limbo. This dog is chasing after me. And so I just instinctively jumped. So the game is forcing you to jump. There is kind of a high perspective visual polish to this, but I'm not sure gamers have been trained to appreciate a high perspective kind of landscape photography visual polish here. It's not really like this is particularly bright or high contrast in the colors or has an amazing color palette. It's just fairly zoomed out with a lot of background stuff. Yeah. And if you really, really love animating background, I don't think you should probably do that in the video game. That's something more you would do in like a Bob Ross painting. Now the more I lean, the faster I run, and there's kind of a considerable amount of empty space that we're seeing in between each of these sequences. I can't help but feel like compared to Limbo, this is going to be a shorter game, unless they try to make the puzzles a little bit more ooh, interesting. So I just got shot. Was that supposed to happen in the game? No. So you have to kind of keep on moving. So they've made a game with really long levels. It looked like I was shot with some kind of tranquilizer dart. Yeah, there's one that seems like it always ends up in your back, and one that ends up on the ground to the left of you. And honestly, in Limbo, I feel like I died a couple times, and that was it. Whereas I've already died twice in this game. Seems like there's really no penalty for dying other than having to reset the whole thing, which maybe means the game will have a lot of cheap deaths. I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. You can see this guy. It doesn't show what happens at the end there. Yeah, this definitely feels like this is more going into the Sonic problem, which the first Limbo game had that problem also. Basically, that see, that was bullets that time. That was not tranquilizer darts. So this feels like a game that you may get an achievement for just finding multiple ways to die. I'm supposed to do something with this van, but I don't know what. Either that, or I am triggering this guy chasing me. So now we got like 2 people chasing me. And I'm just trying my very best to not trip on logs. Okay. Feels like I can't breathe underwater. So now the checkpoint problems. When I talk about the Sonic problems, by the way, the problem with Sonic games is that you want to go fast, you want to run, and there's no system actually in Sonic games to know that there is. I guess maybe it was supposed to go this way instead. There really is no system to know that what's going to be ahead of you. So you have to pretty much die on the first try in a Sonic game. Here we can see I'm supposed to push this, and I'm going to have to pull it and push it. And these pods in the background are supposed to indicate that. Now, I don't know if I just found a collectible or if this is an absolute necessary upgrade. I just got an achievement for doing that. And down that way is nothing. So that may have all been the prologue to the actual game. And this may be the beginning of a long escape. I wouldn't be surprised if the entire game is an escape sequence, considering how Limbo, the entire game, was effectively a moving from the left to the right escape sequence. It doesn't feel like a game like this. Yeah, I guess there's not anything in the water, or I missed it. It doesn't feel like a game like this can go that far. Here we have some dead pigs. As far as telling you a lot of backstory or a lot of narrative and conversation or anything like that. It seems like it is going to be very abstract, and while that was fine with Limbo 1, it making an extremely similar game in Limbo 2 5 years later feels like you've not grown your ambition with your success. Or Inside is not really Limbo 2, but similar enough. It would be ridiculous if they came out with a third game that was exactly the same. And I feel like the reception definitely reflected that there was considerably less talk around the game Inside compared to Limbo. I feel like Limbo also was a game that was given away for free in humble bundles and other free giveaways or cheap giveaways. Something I think is following me. Some little chickens, maybe? I'm hearing little sounds. Yep. Little chickens, it sounds like, are following me. Either chickens or rats. Field mice. So there might be some puzzle here. And so I'm walking fairly slowly. So they'll all follow me around. Because I assume running would scare them away. Here we can see another pile of just dead pigs. And they're not like harvesting the meat on these pigs. They're just leaving them to rot. Which would definitely explain the rats. This door doesn't seem like it's going to open. So it seems like we are going to instead have to swing our way in. And effectively, that puts us in the next level. So at 24 minutes, I think this is where I'm going to end this episode. I'm constantly trying to make shorter episodes because that's what YouTube people, I think, actually prefer as far as covering games. Not a ton has happened, and I'm not sure a ton really will happen. There was basically a reveal of what the world was and what you were perceiving at the end of Limbo. And actually more backstory than I was actually expecting at the end of Limbo. I wouldn't be surprised if that's exactly what happens in Inside also, is that at the very end we'll get a reveal of what the world is like. But Otherwise, it seems like it's going to mostly just be very simplistic platforming mechanic puzzles, which aren't really breaking the mold by any means. If you were to compare what we've done so far to, say, what the Tomb Raider reboot has you do, or what Assassin's Creed has you do as far as climbing and swinging and jumping, like plenty of other games have those kinds of movement mechanics and use them a lot more. Uh, I can't hate on a game specifically just because it's narrowed its scope and tried to be a smaller experience and a more linear experience. But typically, when I do want to see a linear experience in a game, I also want to see some narrative around it and some ambition. You take away from the concepts of having open world games and bigger games so you can focus on something else. You don't just say, here's a small game with some uh, simple concepts that anybody could do, because that's too easy to copy. Um, yeah, you wouldn't go back and try and make Super Mario Brothers 1, for instance, which just has running and jumping. You would make something like Mario 64, which is 3D, running, wall jumping, kicking, backflipping, all kinds of actions like that. Or Mario Odyssey, I guess, is even a more recent example. You have to move with the times and try to be a bit more bold. And inherently, if Inside fails to really impress, which so far it has, it does highlight how even a successful, lucky company doesn't guarantee that their next game is going to be any better, uh, or is going to be good at all. Well, there have been many instances of people getting lucky with one very popular game, and then they turn around and come out with a sequel that's not as satisfactory, and they never make anything that is quite as good as it was before. Um, Oftentimes, somebody makes a good game with one company and then they go to work for a bigger company, or they break up that one company and start a different company trying to do something different. Anyways, I don't want this to drag on that long. That's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to further follow me, there's a bunch of links down below. And if you want to support me further, there's a link to Patreon, or you can friend me on Steam and get me a game off my wishlist. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.